You don't technically need this car. You say that out loud to yourself. You say, I have no space. You say, I'm just looking. Then you click. Then you zoom in on photo number 87 and whisper, oh no. Then you text a friend, the one who always enables you. You say to yourself, this is the last one, knowing it is not. You don't need this car. But maybe, just maybe, this car needs you. Bring a trailer. It's never just a car.
Hello everyone, I'm Chris Wynn and welcome once again to How We're the Podcast as we reflect on an Easter weekend of football that had pretty much zero consequences. On Good Friday, the lads suffered a defeat at Bristol City, and then we returned to the Stadium of Light on Easter Monday and went down by 1-0. And despite the fact that it's the first time we've lost 3 in a row since the final 3 games of last season, we are likely going to debate how much we care about losing and potentially talk about 1 or 2 positives we can take from the weekend. So to help us with this, we first have a familiar voice from down under, which is, of course, Martin Wunless. Hello, Martin.
Hello, Chris. It will be, it'll be interesting to see what we can actually talk about from this. If we don't want to get consumed by negativity, but we'll see how it goes.
Well, it's bizarre, isn't it? There's a big debate going on, which we've been kind of touching on and we've been kind of getting into, but the defeats have kind of emphasised that a little bit, I think, and obviously now with the games kind of petering out, you're staying up till God knows what time to watch games that have zero consequence on them.
It's hard. Like I don't normally do pre-season friendlies. It's you're kind of getting into that territory, aren't you? End of season friendlies. So it's an interesting time.
Yeah. And throughout this podcast, Martin, because I'm going to introduce our special guest in a minute, but I might have to think up of different names throughout the pod to call you. So just so you're aware.
I answer to a lot. It's all
yeah,
right,
that's
so.
it. You've been called worse. That's for definite. But yeah, for our special guest today, we have someone who burst onto the scene during an otherwise fairly dour time for Sunderland in the early 90s, scoring 28 goals in 145 appearances for the lads after scoring a 40-yard free kick just minutes into his debut in front of the full end, because it always has a yard or two added on every year that goes by. And as well as that, he is rumoured to be the illegitimate child of arguably the greatest footballer that ever lived. It is, of course, Martin Smith. Hello, welcome, Martin.
Oh, yeah, he's all right. It probably shows how old I am now that it's up to 40 yards.
Well, I was going to go further, but I thought actually 40 yards for you sounded realistic, so I thought I'd keep it to there. So, how are you keeping?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you. Yeah, just actually, my friends have been they're on the negativity sort of train at the minute, and I'm actually the one who's trying to keep people positive. It's a bit unlike me, but I'm sort of trying to get myself in the head of the players and just what they're going through. So I'm sort of still reasonably upbeat and positive about everything.
You couldn't have given us a better introduction, because I think that's pretty much going to be the story of this pod, I think, because it's all kicked off. But before we get into kind of Sunderland and the kind of what's going on at the minute, and in terms of, you mentioned about feeling old, Martin, and me and Martin have been talking about this morning because Craig Chapman reliably informed us that it's been 30 years to the day that we're talking since you scored that goal against Swindon Town at Roker Park.
Wow, is it really?
Mm-hmm.
I obviously knew it was around this time, April, and it was a long time ago, about 30 years. It's crazy. Yeah, so, yeah, it's one of them that sticks in the memories of people. I know Reedy always says, and even in his book, he references back to it as being a massive goal in terms of his managerial career and sort of where the club was. So yeah, it's still nice to be remembered for some stuff that was positive back in the day.
Yeah. Does it still weird on socials and stuff? Do you still get sent stuff and does it obviously the goals, the debut and stuff like that? People keep sending them, and then it's like, it's 20 years since then, and now it's 25 years since then, and now it's 30 years since.
Yeah, it is. It's every year. You'll see me too. I can't believe it's been 26. I can't believe it's been 27. You forget, and it is. And I mean, there's times it feels like yesterday. There's certain goals, certain moments that they're just there, they're fresh, as I say, like it was yesterday. Then there's other things you just think, Jesus, was that? You look in the mirror and think, was that really me? It's that long ago. But yeah, it's crazy where the time goes. I've actually been retired now longer than I played, which is mad. Yeah.
So where, just out of interest, where does that one rank? Because obviously you mentioned the debut, obviously that quick goal on your debut. There's that big goal against Swindon, which maybe might not have felt huge at the time, but probably as it's gone on felt bigger. But where does that moment and goal rank kind of in the best moments of your career?
Yeah, massive. I say at the time it was the old 6-pointer v Swindon. So yeah, it was a huge game, and obviously you score it, not thinking it might stay 1-0, but it did. It was the goal that got the 3 points. So yeah, it was up there, and it was a good, decent enough strike. Not probably one of the best I've ever hit in my career, and I probably scored better goals for Sunderland. That didn't mean as much, but just in terms of ultimately what it ended up doing, it was probably the biggest one. Yeah.
Yeah. Good memories for you, Martin. I mean, you must have been 25 or something at the time, were you?
Knocking on to about that. No, but it was that complete contrast, wasn't it, of sort of feeling around the whole club when Peter Reid came in. The last few, certainly the last couple of months of Mick Buxton's time in charge, it kind of felt everything was only heading one way, and Peter Reid came in, galvanised the whole thing, and those games that we're talking about there, kind of typifies just what somebody can do, the effect that somebody can have, and I think you can kind of bring parallels to today as well. Those games where there's something really at stake, like that Swindon game that you scored in. It's impossible not to give that extra little bit. I think, when you're talking about the games that we're going to come on to, that the current team's playing, when there's nothing at stake, I would say it's virtually impossible to play like it does mean something, because it's just that intangible thing, that little bit of extra that everybody gives when the crowd's up for it. It's the crowd as well as the players, the manager, everybody. It's something different, and you can't necessarily put your finger on it, you can't quantify it. But when there is something at stake, when there is something to genuinely play for, there is a different feeling around the whole place. And the Sheffield United game when Reedy came in, the Swindon game, those games that we just managed to kind of scrape up that season. But we would have gone down if things hadn't changed. And then of course we all know what happened the following season. So it's it ended up being a very good time to be a Sunderland supporter, because we'd had a few years of not the best sort of stuff to watch, hadn't we? So yeah, that's all good stuff.
That's it.
And those are the sort of games I remember every detail of. Like I can't really remember much from like a game a couple of years ago, but ask me anything around that sort of time, I can genuinely remember it. Never mind give you the answer.
Yeah. I think that's going to be a recurring theme of today's pod. But I was going to say to you, Martin, don't worry, because the last time we spoke, I asked you, what you'd said your favourite songs were in the 1993 interview in the Sunlun annual. So there'll be nothing like this, this time around. I'm not going to spring any surprises.
Yeah, that still pops up again, that annual. I think but Brian Adams in there, wet, beast, Deacon Blue. To be honest, they're probably still the same.
I was going to say, has it changed
on a night after a few drinks in the house?
That's it. Few sherries, they get whacked on the Alexa, don't they? But last time we spoke to you, you involved in sports management or maybe football agency to the rest of us. So what are you up to at the moment?
Yeah, I'm still doing that. We're Quantum Sport with Gordon Armstrong works with us, so I've been doing that now. Probably since about 2013, 14. So yeah, it was never something I ever sort of saw myself doing, but I got the opportunity to do it, got into it, and it just kept me involved in football, and it's grown. As I say, I've probably been doing it 10 years. I don't think a lot of people know I do it, because I'm not like massively active on social media and putting stuff out about me players, but I enjoyed it. I've sort of had lads who I've looked after since they've been 16, 17, and they're coming up towards the other end of their career, so I've stuck with them. So it's been good for us, just keeping involved, and it is. It can be challenging at times, and say that the agents do get a bit of a bad rap at times. But it's like anything. There's the good and bad ones. I had an agent myself from the age of 17, 18. So it's always something I had, and it's decent. It gets you out, as I say, gets you out of football, keeps you involved, and you just got to have a thick skin sometimes, just like playing.
Yeah. Well, I don't know, when you talked about vocal agents, I don't know why, but Ian Hart popped into my head, but I think, well, that's maybe a different story. But you said you've had like 10 years, seeing that from that side of it, and obviously, you follow the lads and grew up supporting them, so you're able to see what goes on almost behind the scenes and how things kind of work, as well as seeing how Sunderland have worked. So from your viewpoint and experience of what you've done, what goes on behind the scenes in those deals and how they worked, I mean, how do you look at the way Sunderland have recruited over the last few years? Because we've had some high profile success stories. You've got the Joe Bellinghams, you've got, those kind of Dennis Serkins who you seen, that I'm getting text messages from Premier League fans who support Premier League clubs going that they're gutted to see some of these young players leave. But we've also had, a few from abroad that haven't quite gone right. So how do you look at it overall?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I would say that there's definitely been a clear plan, and if there's a plan and you stick to it, you've got to sort of applaud it and hope that it goes well. And I think the majority have. I think in the past, especially coming towards the end of maybe the Premier League time and the first time we went back down to the Championship, it was just maybe a quick fix, go and try and get players for here and now. Who'll possibly just come for the money, maybe not all of them, but certain things happen, create a bad dressing room. And I think the whole thing about the place saying it was it really was on a downer. But the way they're going about it now, there's a clear plan, whether you'd agree with it or not, whether it needs tweaking with maybe a bit more experience. That's everybody's different opinion, but I don't think you can have a go at them for what they're trying to do. And say that, I think in terms of the recruitment under Stuart Harvey and Christian Speakman, you've got to applaud because they've found some real gems. It's going to be, if things don't work out well over the next year or two and players start to leave, can we keep finding them? Can you keep doing it? I think so. Everything's we're in the middle of that cycle at the minute, and it's just how it's going to end up. But I think for here and now, you've got to applaud what they've done.
Yeah. And that's it, Martin. I mean, transfers are, I'm going to Aussie Martin here. You look at their track record, and, transfers aren't easy. I mean, even you look at Alex Ferguson, greatest manager probably to ever live. And you can point, I remember the Jembas and the Klebus and all of that sort of stuff.
Ralph Milne was the one going at him, wasn't it?
But it's not, you're not going to get them all right, are you?
Well, you're not. And I think, there's two things I think really sort of tell you how we've done. One is, if you get more right than you get wrong, you're kind of on the right track, I think. We've gone through so many years of watching Sunderland play where we've had players that we buy for lots of money, we end up giving free transfers to or paying off, and we're still paying them a couple of years after they've left the club because we couldn't get rid of them. So you've got that bit to it. But if you get more right than you get wrong, you tend to be heading in the right direction. I think we've done that over the past few years. The other bit is, people are going, oh shit, what happens if we sell this player or sell that player? And, we're getting quite used now to reading online every day, really, about some club wanting Chris Riggs, somebody wanting Joe Bellingham, somebody interested in Dennis Serkin, somebody wanting Dan Ballard. The list goes on and on. We're kind of not used to that because for a long time we haven't had players that other clubs have wanted. So it's a kind of a different, it is a different era that we're kind of in. And the unfortunate thing that happens when you've got good recruitment and you're developing players well is that other clubs are going to want them. Now, what happens in the summer is going to be massive. As Martin says, we're going to enter this sort of next phase of it where other clubs are wanting our players. We've kind of dipped our toe in the water with Jack Clark leaving in September. And, it's how that money is then reinvested. Does it up the ante in terms of where we're recruiting from? Do we start recruiting from a different place, a more quality place? Do we start recruiting more experience? What do we do with the money that we get in for these players? Because, the likes of, I think if we're sat here at the end of the summer transfer window and Chris Rigg, Joe Bellingham, Cirque, and all of these players are still at the club, we'll be doing bloody well, because I think some of them will go. It's what we do with that money then. Does that change how we approach things? Yes, we might still recruit younger players, but are we recruiting younger players who we're paying 6, 7, 8 million for rather than getting in free transfers? And I think that's where it's going to be really interesting to watch to see how it goes. But, I think, look, you can argue till the cows come home about whether we should be buying more experience, whether we should be doing X, Y, and Z. The proof is in the proof of the pudding's in the eating of it, as Gav always likes to correct everybody who uses that phrase. So, we look at where we are, where we've come from. And look, yes, you could have spent 50 million in the summer and we could have had a chance of being in automatic promotion, of course. But the way that we're doing it, longer term, will hopefully see us in a far better place and a more satisfying place, I guess, than anything else. But no, look, I think to cut a long story short, the recruitment's been good. We've got some good players in, and I think you look at how we've developed them, coached them, and that's the telling thing. How those players have come along, and I think we're in a pretty good place all told.
Yeah, and just on that, I bumped into Gav down the stack, and I saw him eating his bait, so I know exactly why he says that. He ends it like that. Yeah, again, on the agent side, Martin, we spoke to Gordon Armstrong recently about this topic, and I thought I'd raise it with you, which was the agents' fees that from the championships that were released between February of last year and February of this year. Sunlun 10th highest, just over 2 million. Leeds at the top. Obviously, you've got that Premier League aspect, but 18.8 million. I think it comes out, well over, 3 to 4 times as much as the next club, which were Burnley. And then you've got Sheffield United on 4 million. They were third, and that's the top 3 in the league. Having seen it again from your side, is that another good sign of how we're doing things, that 4th in the league, but 10th in that table in terms of agents' fees? I mean, is there a correlation?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you look at Leeds and they've gone up, so that there possibly is, so that they're spending more money on players, but that doesn't obviously guarantee your success. So, but yeah, I mean, the numbers do come out, and they are big, and it is. I can understand why people look at it and think, well, why the hell's that going to them and stuff like that. But sometimes it is in terms of, especially a lot of the foreign players, the agents will bring the players to the club, but there's a lot of scouting work. Like, we'll get phone calls off clubs. Have we seen this player? Like, the sort of half trust certain people's opinions on players. So it's not just the actual deal. You're bringing players to them that they might not even have seen. So there's different little aspects to it. But in terms of the money, yeah, I mean, I think we probably have gone down from what we have paid in the past. So, and again, not all clubs will pay fees to a certain extent, which you say you can understand as well. But yeah, there's a lot of money swirling about, and unfortunately, I haven't got my answer on it yet. No, what it is, it's I can understand. As I say, you can understand why people look and think, "Well, why is this coming out of the game?" and this and that. But what I would say in terms of agents, it isn't just the day. They do other aspects of work, and I say they work with clubs. And if the agent wasn't getting it, probably he's gone in the chief executive's pocket anyway. So it does get spread out with different people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, the biggest one, I suppose, in Sunderland terms recently is obviously the news of Tommy Watson going to Brighton for 10 million. And it's interesting, obviously, looking back, that, there's lots of parallels you could make with yourself. A young player coming through the ranks, breaking through, and then, I remember last time we talked to you, you said, straight away, I think it was a couple of months into you, after your debut, you played against Ron Atkinson's Aston Villa. Then you gave Earl Barrett a torrid time on the wing, and Ron Atkinson inquired about you, and that was quite early on. I mean, can you see the position he's in, that a Premier League club's come in, quite early in his career? He's not necessarily a regular starter at Sunderland. And he kind of went for it, and Brighton paid the money, and it's gone through.
Yeah, it's a tough one, and as I said before, it was never in my head to leave when I was young. I just saw myself playing for the one club, and that was it. It was never about anything else, but that was just me personally. Tommy, I think the lure of the Premier League, how good Brighton are doing, how they've improved players, you can understand it in a lot of ways. And so early in his career, to be offered that, he might think, I might never get another chance to do it. So you can see from both sides. Is he going to go there and play? You'd have to see. You wouldn't have thought so. So he's going to go into probably a club where he's going to have to battle to get anywhere close to the first team. So he's obviously he's backed himself to go there and do well, and you can't knock that. Time will tell whether it's going to be the right decision. And what I would say, I think the club have done well to get the money they have for him on the back of the amount of games he's played. So once he's said or has been aware that he's wanted to go, I think the club seem to have got the maximum I would have thought anybody could have got at this moment of his career.
Yeah. I mean, again, from an agent's point of view, because you've mentioned that Watson's taken that real step up to an established Premier League club. But it's funny when you look back at the Jack Clarke transfer, and from an agent's point of view, you know, you're doing that deal for maybe your client, and the you know, there's a side that comes in that you say, well, they're likely to come back down, and you want to be a Premier League player, you want to play in the Premier League, and you know, is that likely to have been a strange conversation where you're saying, you know, do you try and wait for that club where you say, well, actually that might get you 2-3 seasons in the Premier League, or do you just kind of, if that's the only offer, you basically flip a coin and say, well, let's hope we stay up and get established?
Yeah, I think, but you'd have the conversation with the player and say, look, this is on. Are you happy here? Do you want it? And he's obviously been given the green light, his agent, to explore what's there. And I'd say I had an agent all my career, and he never told me what to do. I made the decision where I was going. It was always me. So I think, say you ask the player, you get his opinion on stuff, and then you work with what he tells you. Again, the Jack Clarke situation, I can understand it as a player. Obviously, he was happy here, but could he have seen what was going to happen this season? He might have been like all the fans out there who thought this season could be a struggle in the Championship, Sunderland. So he's thought, right, if I can get the Premier League, back myself, even if Ipswich come down and I do well, somebody else might come and take me on the back of that.
Yeah,
you know. So he's obviously backed himself. He'll have been rewarded in terms of his contract. There'll be a lot more. But yeah, you couldn't blame him for going. I couldn't anyway. To jump into the Premier League and back yourself to do well. I think a lot of people thought Ipswich might do all right and stay up as well. But I think obviously the gulf's been proved again this year with the 3 coming down that it is massive. But he's backed himself to go there and do well.
Yeah. And Ozzy Martin, from a fan's point of view, are we just going to, while Martin Smith's on the pod, are we just going to agree that agents are the spawn of the devil, and that's just how it is, or is it? Or we got to kind of understand the trend, just trying to get the best for their client at the end of the day?
I think it's always dependent on who the agent is. I think it's probably same as any walk of life in any profession. There's people who are doing it for the right reasons and people who are motivated by something slightly different. Even if you kind of look back, you know, like the likes of, remember Eric Hall?
Yeah.
Was Eric Hall the monster fella? Like, you know, you've always had people like that who have, you know, tried to move players on for the best deal and really wring the best deal out of any situation. And you've had, you know, far more agents who we've probably never even heard the names of, who are acting behind the scenes and do the best for the client. And I think, you know, it's whoever you hitch your wagon to, that kind of tells you a lot, doesn't it? But I think, you know, I'm always wary of football agents and referees who you really know the name of.
That's it. Well, we'll not. We'll leave this conversation here, and we'll not ask Martin.
So we're going to agree on referees.
Yeah, we'll not confirm what your motivation is, Martin. We'll crack on with other stuff. Well, let's look. Let's get on to the appointment of Reggie Lebree and how he's doing, because I remember in the summer I was talking about, when we're talking about the next manager, because we had lots of time to think about it, with obviously Mike Dodds finishing off the end of last season. Now I'm from the school where I was banging on the table maybe and kind of talking about managers like Dennis Smith, like Peter Reid, like Mick McCarthy, people who've got that, I don't know what it is, but they'll call a spade, and they'll kind of, they've got that kind of speech in them that gets the fans up for it. But I don't think we've ever had a manager like the current one who keeps everything on an even keel and keeps everything calm, and all the press conference, he's just saying the right things and not giving the media anything at all. And he always, no matter how bad a decision is, always comes out calm, always says, yep, okay, that's fine, we'll crack on, we'll see what's next. I mean, at some point, do you almost think that scares Sunderland fans at some point, that we've got a manager like that?
I think he's maybe caught a lot of people by surprise how calm he has been. Yeah, and as you say, he seems to just be taking stuff in his stride, whether behind the scenes he's feeling a little bit different, but he comes across well. His demeanour's never changed, and the way he goes about things, which I think is a good sign, because if you see your manager panicking, you do start to think, hang on a minute, he's telling us one thing and then he's going out in front of the press and he's spouting off, and he's got a bit of a wobble on. So he looks like he's keeping everything right. And yeah, I think when he first come in, we were all the same. Like we didn't know a lot about him, and you cannot see if for his first. You've got to see if his first season, he's everything's gone probably as well as can be expected. You're just hoping now he can see it through.
Well, that's it, being fourth in the league behind them three. And I think part of it, because I've heard it a few times recently, is potentially the style of football. Because last time we got in the playoffs under Tony Mowbray, had this reputation for free-flowing football that we played, especially, you think back to that goal we scored at Reading way back when. But this man just come in, very structured, maybe a bit pragmatic at times. And a lot of people are saying, oh, well, I've almost had enough, just because of the football we played. But, for looking at that top three and the squad that we've got, and he's given those young players a bit of structure, is it hard for a manager to get that balance to play a style of football that's successful whilst, almost kind of having that entertaining element as well?
I think it is. And I think especially these days, I think a lot we do want to be entertained as much as win. I think a lot of times we look back and think everything was rosy when we were winning, but there'll have been a lot of days like we're seeing at the minute where it isn't pretty, and you're grinding results out. I'd say I think you just look back with a bit of rose tinted at times. So end of the day, he's just got to get results, and that's all he'll be focusing on. I thought the beginners say we were entertained. I think recently maybe we have become a bit more pragmatic, and he's maybe trying to shore up at the back whether he's saying something that he thinks, right, we can't keep playing like that because we'll get found out. And he has just become a bit more, let's just sit behind the ball and we'll take the 1-0s, 2-0s and sort of grind it out. But yeah, I think he's found his way during the season as well. He's come into it and he's probably tweaked a few things as he's gone along the way. And I think it's, as I say, I think you've got to stay positive getting towards this end of the season. Say the performances, I think they have tailed off. There's no doubt about it. Even before the last couple, they tailed off a little bit. But as I said, I think that does happen during the season.
It's really interesting when you kind of look back on it. I think you're right in terms of like looking back on things with rose-tinted glasses, because I was reading stuff before and people are going mad. Like I really think it's absolute bonkers, because there's people going, we need to sack LeBrie before the playoffs to have a chance of going on. You just think, what fucking planet are you on? Like, I genuinely don't get it. And people are going, the style of football's been crap for the last 6 months. And going, well, if the season started in January, we'd be sixth. So, like, we haven't been crap. We maybe haven't been as good in results terms as we were in the start of the season, but we haven't been crap. And then you go, people go, oh, we're playing all this, high pressing, free flowing football at the start of the season. We weren't. Like, if you look back at the games at the start of the season, Sheffield Wednesday at home was a bit of an outlier, because that was the first home game. We won 4-0 and we did play a high press in that game. After that, we played Burnley at home, where we We defended really well and really structured, and we hit them on the break. Borough, if you remember the Borough game, we were so, structured and defensive. Even from kickoff, their centre-half had the ball, and we just stood off them, and you didn't know what to do. So we've played these games all season. I actually think when you look at it, if you can take a step back and look at it, we probably haven't changed the style of play at all season. What's happened is at the start of the season, that first half of the season, we played the better teams at home, and the better teams came out and attacked us, which enabled us to sit back and get them on the break. Since January, since we played Sheffield United, we've had a string of games where we've played against teams down at the bottom of the league and mid-table, where they've just come and sat back, and the onus has been on us to go and break them down. And look, we haven't been able to do that. And I think that's a bit of, rightly you can go, well, we should have had a different approach to those games potentially to break those teams down. But this whole thing where, are we playing really well at the start of the season and our style of play has changed? It hasn't. I just don't get it. I think we've just been playing against different teams. And I think you can criticise us for not having a different approach to breaking those teams down and maybe not being more attacking in certain elements of that play and not having a change of gear for those games where we have needed to break teams down. You can criticise us for the amount of efforts we have on goal. You can criticise our set pieces. There's a few things to pick out, but to just go really sort of top level and go, it's been crap since January and we need to sack him, is just so far removed from what I see as the reality. I can't fathom it at all.
Yeah, you need to be more like me and avoid social media, Martin. That's what you know. I only know
it's rabbit hole, isn't it? I started looking at the day. I was like, oh, fuck. And you just go down and down and down. And you've got threads. I was reading some forum. You've got threads, and you've got 80% of the people going, well, if we don't go up, he's got to get sacked. And I tell you what that is. That is this cycle that we've been in probably for the last 15 years, where no manager at Sunderland gets more than 18 months, and we've got a whole generation of people who think that's normal, and it shouldn't be normal. And maybe it is normal now. Maybe we're kind of going, we need to give people more time. But if that approach had been taken in the 80s and 90s, Dennis Smith wouldn't have got us promoted to the first division. Peter Reid wouldn't have got us promoted for the second time because he would have been sacked in the top flight, right?
After Elm Park,
there's an awful lot to be said. Yeah. There's an awful lot to be said for just having a little bit of patience and kind of just going with it. Yeah. And I do have a little bit of a concern that we've seen the club react to noise before, and I do have a little concern that if we don't go up, that initial swell of opinion might be a little bit loud.
Yeah, I think it's one of them where if it does it, it'll be the start of next season. If things don't start well, then it suddenly does become, the noise becomes louder, doesn't it? It does. But I think that's a great point you make about the teams we've played and why it maybe looks a different style. See, teams are coming and just sitting in, so it does suddenly become a bit more of a sterile game. Whereas if teams are both having a go at each other, you get carried, think, oh, this is exciting. But as you point out, say the teams that have been coming, just say, I think yesterday was a prime example, wasn't it? They got the goal and just sat in.
Yeah,
that's exactly right. Yeah. I think we have really struggled to break those teams down, and I think I think you can level criticism at us not being able to figure out a solution to that. But I think what we've seen all of the season, home and away, for the vast majority of it, there's only the Coventry game really that stands out as an exception to it. You'd be pretty confident going to any of the top sides, having to face them home and away and getting results, because I think we're kind of set up to get results against better teams.
Yeah, and you look back at obviously losing 6 in the last 12, which is where a lot of this is coming from. But you look back to that run, and the first 2 defeats in there, whether the Leeds game, the Hull game, which was kind of mid-February, and then that was when automatic promotion was pretty much lost. And I think everyone kind of accepted it after that. There was some glimmers of hope when teams started to slip up, but that was pretty much it. So as a player, Martin, do you even subconsciously, when there's not that push? I mean, we were talking about that Swindon game earlier on where, I bet there was really had everyone up for it because, a 6-pointer at the bottom late in the season. I think there was only 3 games left or whatever it was. So you've got so much to play for. There's so much there to kind of achieve in that game. Do players just, when you know you're going to finish fourth and there's not that much to play for, even if the players think they're up for it, is there always that subconscious feeling that we can just take our foot off the gas a bit?
I think there's got to be. I mean, I was just thinking what it must be like as the players, and I just go back to where we won the league in 95, 96, and then the last 3 games we couldn't score a goal. And it was nothing like we didn't go out there thinking, all right, we're not going to bother today. We're off at it. You go out, prepare the same, and it just doesn't happen. And that must just be that couple of percent, just something that's not quite switched on. Maybe training isn't as intense during the week because you've done the job. And I've got a feeling this must be what they're going through.
Yeah.
Not meaning to do something. And again, the manager's making changes. He's trying to get minutes into players who he might need. So there's that sort of disjointedness, like all the players are not up to speed. So, yeah, it is. It's just something, whether you think it or not, it obviously happens. Because you see it time and time again. Good teams win championships and then kind of get a win. Not everybody, but it happens. And that's what I'm pinning this on. And I just think going into that last week, to that week building up to that first playoff game, I think the whole place will just change. The intensity, everything about it. I can just put it down to say like a pre-season. I hate pre-season games, watching them. I never like playing in them, like training. But that 1 week leading up to that first game of the season, everything just changes in that first game. And I know people talking about momentum and all that, but I just think that's the momentum changes in the first 10 minutes of that first playoff game quite comfortably. With the whole attitude of everybody.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say again, I think, the lads keep passing on these comments. And I think one of the worries and one of the concerns is that, you've got this run and then the question is, how can they just suddenly not play in that one and then suddenly switch it on for the next game? But is it just a case of, we've now got those 2 games left where we've got a week in between each of them. And then I think we've got a week in between the last game and the first leg, I think, from memory. So, and then is it, once we finish that game against QPR, is it then that the players just switch on because of the build-up, because of the intensity, and then that builds up and they know it's a completely different entity in terms of what they played previously against QPR?
Yeah, I would say so. As I say, I can only speak personally that I don't think there would be any issue with me sort of, not that I'd be going through the motions, but somewhere psychologically you are to that first game running out and that build up to that week. Yeah, I just put it down to like a pre-season. You try in but it just doesn't mean you say fans are the same. Do you celebrate a goal in pre-season like you do first game of the season? No, it's the whole, everything just changes. You run out at that first game in the playoff and the first home game of the playoff. The whole atmosphere and everything's just going to be so different. You kind of not be bang up for it and at it. And just thinking the players we had in the dressing room, them Kevin Ball and all them, and we trained hard and he'd trained, you wouldn't let your standards drop. But said that last 3 games of the season, for whatever reason, it just didn't happen. But I knew I would have known if it was a playoff scenario and you had a couple of games quiet, that first game of the playoffs there's no way they're not going to be up for it. And I think it's been good that he's made a few changes. I saw one interview where he did come out and say, we're playing these and that. And I would have liked to see more, look, this is what we're doing, stick with us. For 3 or 4 games, we know we're going to be fourth. We're going to get minutes into lads. So-and-so's going to have a bit of a rest, he's feeling. Because you get to this stage of the season and everybody's carrying something. If you played a good amount of games, he's having a rest for this reason. Just make it clear, look, we're focusing on that big game. Look, I could be totally wrong. We might get blown away in that first game of the season, but I don't think it'll be anything to do with the way we're playing now. I don't think that'll have any bearing on that first game.
Yeah. Well, in some ways, because again, touch on the game against Blackburn, you just mentioned it there. In some ways, did the manager communicate that with the starting 11? Because you look at that and there's basically 4 maybe 4.5 players who might be in the lineup if the players started tomorrow. You've got Patterson, Mepham, O'Nien and Job. And then there's Isidore up front who's going to fight it out with Mayenda, probably depending on how the manager wants to set up in those 2 games. But then there's 6 players who I'd be amazed if any of them started any of the playoff games. So, you're saying that the manager comes out and says it, but surely he's kind of screaming it from the rooftops with that starting 11.
Yeah, but I think sometimes certain elements need the dots joined together. It's just come out and this is it. Like, just say, stick with us. Like, obviously we're trying, we're giving lads minutes, but we're just building up to that. Well, the 2 games, but that 1 game, really, that first game, that's what all the focus is now. Everything we're doing now, we're trying to build up with that. So we're making sure everybody's in the best possible position and shape to be ready for that. I mean, I personally would, the last game, QBR would like to see more or less the full team out. I think if I was a player, I would want that last game just to try and you're into it, and just try and get everybody going again. And look, this is the team. And as I say, hopefully everybody's up for it and get a positive result. Yeah. But it still wouldn't bother me if QBR turned us over. Yeah. It really wouldn't. Yeah. Let's see how many times you see teams in pre-season kind of win a game, first game of the season, they're going back to somebody.
Yeah. I mean, Ozzy Martin, I remember Rob Mason said weeks ago that he would basically do teams like this for the rest of the season. And I can't remember. I mean, but you're probably going back to mid-March, I think, when he said this, a month ago or so. Are you amazed, actually, in some ways, that it's taken this long for him to put out a starter line where he's made so many changes?
No, because I think he's done it relatively sensibly. And I think what he's tried to do is keep everybody ticking over to a certain level, hasn't he? So he hasn't given everybody 3 weeks off. He's kept the team kind of ticking over with enough in the legs, but not overexerting them. But I think you've got to look at all of a lot of the changes he's made have been pretty much enforced anyway. You've had Sirkin, Job, Ballard, Lefay, Mundell, Watson, all out for long spells. Hume's been, desperate for a rest. He came back from international duty injured. So it was only really that game yesterday, wasn't it? He has made a lot of changes. And I think really he'd have preferred the Blackburn Bristol City games to be the other way around. Because I think if there had been, we'd have seen this team on Friday and gone into Bristol with a full strength or full earth strength side. But look, I think, he's tried to kind of hit the right mark, hasn't he? Because you don't want to take the piss out of the other teams who are playing for something. You don't want to kind of let that down. But I actually thought he might make more changes yesterday. I thought, Simon Moore should have probably had a game in goal at some point because, if something happens to Patterson in one of the 2 games, you want your goalkeeper to come on and have a bit of sharpness. But I actually think we'll probably see a pretty strong team at Oxford on Saturday. And obviously another strong team at keeper. I think we'll start ramping it up now. But, the team that played yesterday, even if you look on the bench, there's probably only, Neil, Roberts, Mayenda, who would probably start if that was a serious game. So I think we are kind of a bit short with injuries as well, and we haven't got the biggest squad. So it's kind of been hard to rotate too much without kind of really dragging all the under-21s in.
Yeah, and actually, despite all those changes, I actually thought we played okay. I thought actually the performance wasn't bad.
Well, the performance was kind of similar to a lot of performances that we've had this season. I think we've had a fair bit of possession, played some nice football until we get to the final third. We've kind of struggled with a cutting edge in the final third, and our set pieces have been crap. So it's kind of been quite reminiscent of a lot of games.
Yeah, absolutely. That was the point. I don't think we're created any chances. I'm not sure whether the keeper actually made a save in the whole game from memory. And like Martin says, or Ozzy Martin said for a while, just for the distinction, it's been like that for a while. Creating chances has been a problem. And the goals have pretty much dried up for Isidore Mayenda. But again, we're talking about that, but we have to remember on the flip side, the nature of the games and the players around them rotating so much, where you're not getting the same service. When you're making the same runs, it's a different player who doesn't see you, things like that. I mean, so should that be a concern at all, that we're worried about scoring goals, man?
I think it's tough, because I think if I don't think Wilson is like a natural goal. He scores great goals, but I don't think he's like a great goal scorer, if you know what I mean. So I think you're relying on him for a bit brilliance. I think my end is different. I think he can maybe be a bit more in the box and create a little bit for himself that way. But But then, as Martin said, I think it has been a lot like that all season, apart from the odd one. I mean, going into playoffs, I don't think we'd blow anybody away. I think it'll be, if we win it, it's a 1-0, 2-0. But it has been like that for the majority of the season, apart from odd goals, from odd performances. So it doesn't take much for it just to flip a little bit, which it sort of has at the minute. But yeah, and that can be down to the changes that are getting made and not the continuity in the team. But I think, as I say, once that full team, and that's why I will try and play near as much as your full team, especially in the final game, and just to get everybody going again and getting them understandings going. But I think we'll create chances. It's just whether or not we take them.
Yeah. Well, again, just going back to some of the comments I've seen, one of them again is that we're going through all of this. We're going through 6 defeats in 12. The players have maybe taken their foot off, rotating players, making, those 6 players who probably won't be near the starting 11, Martin. But some are saying, oh, well, because of all of this, we're going to come out in that first leg and we're going to just come out the blocks and we're going to go at whoever we're playing and we're going to just blast them because we're really... And it's just not going to work like that, is it?
Well, we're not going to come out and completely turn in a different performance to anything else that we've seen all season. Like, it's ridiculous to think that we're going to become a swashbuckling, attacking, all-out goal-scoring machine for the playoffs. We're going to approach the 2 playoff games in exactly the same way as we've approached, well, every game this season. We're going to be tight at the back. We're going to try, let teams have possession. We're going to try to catch them on the break. And the deciding factor, as it has been all season, is whether we're going to be clinical enough to take the chances that we get. And, even if you go back, remember when we were looking at Labrie when he came in, and, that was the whole right that we got from Lorient fans. That was the style of football. You don't have much possession. Try to get people on the break and rely on, clinical finishing when you go forward. So I think, anybody expecting to see anything different from what we've seen in every other game this season is, on Fantasy Island, really. It's just not going to happen. I think, look, if you're going to be hypercritical about stuff and you're going to, even if you're looking towards the summer, regardless of what division we're in, this team would benefit so much from a really clinical striker. Even if you're looking at the game yesterday with, the 2 or 3 chances Isidore had, if you had somebody like Kevin Phillips up front, 2 of those go in. There's one in the first half, one in the second half that, a proper clinical striker would score. And I think the way that we play, it almost kind of, you require somebody who's a bit more clinical than what we've got. But you could, again, you're going a little bit too far forward here, but, you could feasibly see a clinical striker playing up front with Mayenda and Isidore either side of him. And how exciting a prospect could that be next season if everybody's still there? So, all of the bits are in place, and if we can just get over the line in the playoffs, then, there's a whole load of things to look forward to. But again, I think, going back to the original point, if anybody's expecting us to come out and be a different size for the playoffs, it's just not going to happen, because even when we have made changes, what we've tried to do as a team, this is because we're well coached, I think, and every player knows what they're trying to do. You see players coming in different positions and they know the role of that position. They know what that position needs to do for the team. So we're not going to chuck all out the window for 2 or 3, well, hopefully 3 games. It's going to be what we've been practicing and doing all season.
Yeah. With your players hat on, Martin, thinking back to how you would have responded to this. I mean, you've had this spell, we talked about going back to late February, when almost that automatic kind of promotion went out the window. I mean, is it almost good from a player's point of view mentally that you've had what we might say March through April, maybe 2 months of not having that intensity week in, week out, where you have to be, you're chasing something. If you drop points, it's a disaster. That pressure that you've got on you before a game, and then that kind of, that huge low if you don't get the result after the game. I mean, is that going to be good for them when it comes around to then saying, right, now we've got this to play for now, and you've had that bit break?
I would think potentially, yeah. I was talking to somebody about the other day, and he said, what would you? And I said, again, like, you get to the end of the season as a player, and it's not just physically, mentally, from everything you've been through. You are tired, but it doesn't take long after you're into your summer holiday to think, I'm fresh, I'm ready to go again. So I think it will be a positive. They know what the focus is, and I don't think there's going to be any sort of downside of getting back up for it. Right. I think they'll come in just fresh and ready, raring to go. Ultimately, it come down to whether we're good enough. So you're talking about where we play. I think our first away game could be massive. If we end up a couple down and somebody can come here and just sit in, I think could be a problem for us. But if we go away and the team's going to have to come at us, that might just suit us. And if we can get ahead, everything from there on really suits the way we play. So, yeah, just again, I keep going, but from a player's point of view, I don't think it'll be any sort of. I couldn't think there'd be a negative. I think once you've gotten over the fact that it's not going to be automatic, but that's happened so far back really now, that'll be gone. That'll not be even. I think it's the team that comes in, maybe Sheffield United now, they're just coming on the back of, that's gone. I think that's always a tough one when you think you're going to go automatic and then you've got to go again. But for us, because it's been so a few weeks ago, I think that'll be totally out of the system now. So it should really be a positive for the mental side of it.
I think the other interesting thing with it, people are kind of losing their mind about our bad run of form and going into the playoffs on the back of we've won 1 in 5 or whatever it is. But we're the only team who can finish in the playoffs who's had nothing to play for over the past few weeks. So Sheffield United are in a similarly bad or actually worse run of form than we are. And they've been going for the top 2. So they've lost out in the top 2 through a terrible run of form. You look at the results yesterday. Bristol City got beat, Coventry got beat, Borough got beat, West Brom got beat. You've got all of these teams who are fighting for something and playing the full strength sides, all that sort of stuff. And they're all in
struggling
form. They are, like Borough have lost 3 out of the last 4. Yep. And they're 3 points off the playoffs. So like, it's not as if all of the other teams are waltzing through winning 5 out of 5, 6 out of 6. And we're going, oh shit, we've lost 5 out of 5. Like, our form isn't actually that much different to a lot of the other teams going up there, but the difference is we've had nothing to play for. All of them have had something to play for. And, I would be much more concerned after yesterday, if I was a Coventry fan getting beat off Plymouth or a Bristol City fan getting beat or Sheffield United fan, the run that they've been in, I'd be much more concerned if I was a fan of any of those clubs than us.
Yeah, that's it. Well, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th and 7th all lost. Which tells you something, doesn't it? But again, Martin, with your players out on, I think you've touched on that QPR game. But if you're Patrick Roberts, if you're Chris Rigg, if you're the 2 strikers who want that goal, I mean, are you desperate to play regardless? Or with those last 2 games, are you almost thinking, well, I've got that to come. I don't really want to get injured. So actually, I'm quite happy to sit those 2 out. Or you going, no, I want these 2 games to get a better, to get going again.
I mean, depending on my body, to be honest, especially, I always tended to need an operation at the end of the season. So any minute I will get off, it would be beneficial. But if I was feeling good, I definitely would want to play that last home game, just to finish that season and just you're getting, was it 70 minutes or 90 minutes into you, especially if you haven't been playing the games leading up as much as you would want. I'd probably want that last game just to try and finish on a bit of a high. I think just to know I could get through the game and everything's working all right. But even then, I'd keep saying it, even if the game didn't go so well, it wouldn't affect me mentally in any shape or form. I can't emphasise how much them 2 playoff games are just going to be a different animal to anything that's been in the last few weeks. So the motivation, the mental side of it, that'll just take care of itself.
Yeah. Well, again, like looking forward a bit and putting your agent's hat on now, because obviously the speculation is started probably months ago, with the likes of Job and Chris Rigg, especially some big clubs apparently after them. I mean, with your experience, again behind the scenes, these conversations have likely already started. Do these kind of go back where clubs, did clubs inquire in January and say, right, well, we'll come back in the summer, or even last summer and say, well, we're interested, we'll come back next summer, or, how are do those conversations start that early?
Yeah, definitely. There's people are made aware, the clubs are probably aware, and so sometimes like the agents get it, but sometimes the clubs will instigate it. They might think, right, this is the prime time. He's had a good season. Let's capitalise now. So it might not just, sometimes you find it's the players getting pushed out. It's the other way around. But they'll definitely be interested. There's people, I've got friends who were scouts, and I know they've been at Sunderland games all season because there's 4 or 5 players there that clubs are keeping a close eye on. So yeah, and Sunderland will be more than aware of that. It's a lot of might just come down to whether we go up or we don't go up.
Yeah, the other thing I've heard mentioned recently, I can't remember whether it was Gordon Armstrong or not, but someone mentioned that there's always a lot of scouts watching Sunderland under-21s at the minute.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other side of it. Because of knowing what's come through and the young lads have done so well, people start to come and watch. And they try and get in there and just have a dossier of players coming through. Let's say Tommy Watson, they've been watching him for at least 18 months clubs. It's not like it just happens like that. So people will be watching our 16s, 18s, 21s. But I mean, that happens across the country. If clubs who have good academies, people are there watching, just getting lads on lists and monitoring how they progress. And yeah, Tommy Watson's deal's probably been something that could potentially they've been looking at for at least a year, maybe 18 months, and there'll probably be others in the academies who clubs are looking at now, and whether they wait to try and take them now or they wait till they see how they cope with first team football, then come and get them. Obviously, you're paying a premium if they get in the first team and take them, but then you think, well, at least we've got a bit more of a finished product. We know we can handle that. So yeah, but they will be watching. Sam Riggy was somebody from the under-14s, under-15s, people have been more aware of Chris Rigg, and say that there'll be others in there. That's probably getting the same attention now.
Yeah, there was some European football magazine who had him 29th in Europeans, top young footballers or something. I don't know how they gauge these things, but obviously we always love our players to be on those lists and advertise.
Yeah,
it's always a great thing. But again, I mean, just based on what you said about that speculation, do you see this as like a big crossroads in Kirill Louis-Dreyfus ownership, in that we potentially will need a bit of a rebuild if we don't actually make the Premier League this year?
Yeah, because I think we probably will lose 1 or 2. And then, again, we half expect it because we've been told it'll happen at some point, these players, this is what we're doing. But then it's how do you replace them? Let's say you keep talking about the Brentford, and people talk about Brentford and Brighton model, and they do this, they've done that. But they got to a point where the money they got in for the players they reinvest in, and they're reinvesting. They're spending 10 millions on the likes of Tommy Watson. So it's how do you go from what we're doing now? Do you build with the money you're making, or is that just money's come in, it's disappearing? We're going back to the bargain basement, if you like. Again, there's got to be that progression of the calibre you're bringing in. I think with Brighton and Brentford, there probably wasn't the initial expectation because of the clubs they are and where Brighton had been. So they're probably allowed to build a bit slow without anybody noticing, where we're a big club. We've got 40,000 getting there. There's an expectation for us to probably do it a bit quicker. Yeah. So that's where the interest and how it pans out, it's gonna be hopefully it ends well. Yeah. But that's how, if you want to get your Brighton and Brentford, I think we'll be under a bit of pressure to do it quicker than maybe they have.
Yeah, I think that was what Simon O'Rourke said. He said, yeah, but it's fine at those clubs. But I think, with I think he put it, our big, beautiful, crazy, neurotic fan base, it's a bit more difficult to do it at a club like Sunderland. Ozzy Martin, I'm going to put a tough one to you from a fan's point of view. Because let's say we don't get promoted this season and it doesn't go how we want in the playoffs, because it could come down to a referee's decision, could come down to a deflection of someone's backside. I mean, you go back to 1990, and even though Swindon played us off the park, it came down to the ball hitting off Gary Bennett's leg and going in the opposite corner. So it could come down to something like that. But can we still look back at this season as a success, or is it just all come down to yes or no, do we go up or not, whether it's a success or not?
Well, it's how things change during the course of a season, isn't it? I think if you kind of go back to when Lebris was appointed, or even before that, end of last season, go, well, what would success be next season? And I think all of us would have gone, if we finish in fourth and don't go up, that'll have been a pretty good season for where we are. And obviously, look, we all want the best for the club. We all want to get promoted. We all think that Sunderland should be, not just in the Premier League, but competing towards in the top half of the Premier League. But I think people's expectations change, don't they, in the course of the season? I think this spell that we had earlier in the season where we were top of the league, and we were comfortably top of the league for a good few weeks, weren't we?
Yeah,
I think that heightened expectations.
I needed to be reminded of that. Thanks for it.
That changes expectations, doesn't it? Because you kind of go, you've got the potential there, and I think if we don't go up, the reality is, as we said, we will lose. I think we'll probably lose players either way, regardless of whether we do go up or not. But I think we're probably more likely to lose more if we don't go up. And I think if that happens, we'll always look back on the season as a big what if season, because if we could have gone up and could have kept hold of this group of players, who knows what could have happened with them? Because you see the likes of Job and Chris Rigg and other players in the club, they're going to go on to have really good careers at the top of football, I think, barring injuries or anything else happening to them. Obviously, it's not linear and completely predictable, but you've seen enough players come through to go, you know what, they've got it, and they're going to be very good players. So I think it's this season will go down as a big turning point for us, one way or the other. If we do go up, we're able to keep hold of this, a lot of this squad. If we don't go up, we might have to sell a few. But whether it still goes down as a successful season or not, I think it's been a good season if we don't go up. Has it been a great successful season? Well, probably not, because really we all want to get promoted, don't we? That's the ultimate aim of every season when you start it. For us, it should be, is to have a successful season, which means achieving something. So I don't know. I'm not saying yes or no, actually. I'm kind of sitting. I do a very good job of sitting on the fence there, really.
Yeah, getting splinters in your arse as usual, Martin. Yeah, that's it. By speaking common sense, but yeah, the playoffs, they're obviously shaping up. Only a point between Bristol City and Coventry, and then 3-point gap down to Borough after their slip up at out of form Sheffield Wednesday. Millwall on the same points. Alex Neil still sniffing around, and he will be. I'm sure that'll go down to the last day. Still too close to call. I'm also, I can't wait for Sky to make it all about Frank Lampard in the playoffs. That's going to be an interesting one as well. But Martin, have you got a preference? Do you care? Do you think we shouldn't fear anyone going into the playoffs?
I don't think we should fear anyone. I think Coventry looks like it's potentially the bogey team and seem to have a bit on us. So I'd like to see them not get in there. But then if they don't get in, there's a open the door for Alex Neil. Yeah. I think Bristol City's was the one you'd probably want, and then at Wembley, if you get there, then anything can happen, as we've seen too many times, unfortunately. I think Bristol City is the team I'd probably feel most confident with. But yeah, there's nothing that scares us. Even the teams that have gone up, we've played them this year, and we could have beat them comfortably. especially Sheffield United. I've seen Sheffield United live myself, and they ain't great. So there's nobody who's in there who would scare me. The one thing that scares me is that I don't see us blowing a team away, where I could see us on an off day losing by a couple to maybe a Coventry or a Middlesbrough. That would be me one sort of thing that I am worried about. But in terms of being worried about the other teams, if can we beat them? Yeah, I've no doubt we can if we perform well.
Yeah, I mean, Aussie Martin, all the local papers and websites and all that will have the supercomputers out doing all of the seeing who's going to make it in the playoffs. But are you bothered who we take on?
Oh, look, I think there's that real danger, isn't it? Because I kind of agree with Martin in terms of who you'd rather face and not. But there's a real danger of everyone going, "Oh, be happy with Bristol City." Then us getting stuffed in the first leg at Bristol City, and all of it ends up everywhere, doesn't it? Going, "Oh, all these cocky Sunderland fans thought they'd take the piss out of us." And so I think it's that thing. Like they are one-off games, cup games essentially, aren't they? And you have to beat your best to beat anyone. And I actually don't. You'd rather not play. As I said the other day, I'd rather not play Borough because I can just see what happens at the Stadium of Light if they win and the corner flags go up and the shirts go off. So I'd rather not play them to avoid that. But I think we have to be confident in whoever we get, don't we? And just take them on and look at it as a great opportunity, but you get promoted. I tell you what, the interesting thing is, if you could choose, right? If you could choose where to play the first leg, where would you play it? Would you play it at home or away? Because I think we're better away.
Yeah, I've always preferred to be away, and then the second leg at home. But it's if then we worry, as we've been speaking, is if we go away and get beat, and then somebody comes here and just sits in. Yeah. But then vice versa, if the first game was here, whoever comes probably just sits in, and we spend trying to break them down. So, yeah, I just think that early part of that first game, if we can settle in and get a goal, I think it could be huge in sort of structuring the rest of the two games.
Yeah. It's interesting though, because you say that, but it took us how long to lose a home game? We didn't lose our first home game wasn't until 22nd of February, 34 games into the season. But yeah,
that's right.
You're saying we're better, so it's easy to forget that actually we're a bloody good side.
No, we are. It's just you kind of look at. I always kind of look back at how we went to Burnley, and I just think we played so well at Burnley in terms of keeping it tight, and we should have won that game. And but then on the flip side of that, you've got when we went away to Coventry more recently, haven't you? And we got absolutely turned over. So it's just interesting if you could actually choose which.
It'd be interesting.
The first leg.
It'd be interesting to know what the manager would choose, because that would be the big one. But speaking of confidence, Martin, I'm assuming you've left that bank holiday weekend free.
I have. I actually built my hotel on the Bristol City game for London. I've only been named to book this for about 3 months, but after the Bristol City game, it's funny, I got a bit more confidence from it, even though we got beaten. So right, I'm actually going to book the hotel now, so I've got the hotels booked for Friday and Saturday.
Well, you know what? That's an absolutely fantastic place to leave it, because you heard it here first. We're going to Wembley.
I was saying that it would be a lot cheaper if we went on automatic.
I know
what you spend in London that weekend.
I know, but we've got to go through the pain first, haven't we? But yeah, we'll leave it there, because you heard it here first. We're going to Wembley, so that just leaves me to say thank you very much, Martin Wanless. Always a pleasure, mate.
Thank you, mate.
And thank you for joining us, Martin. It's been an absolute pleasure, and hopefully we'll catch up soon.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, lads.
Good one. Nice one. Thanks again, Martin. And thanks again, everyone, for listening. Only 2 games to go now, and we are counting down the days, as you probably heard during that podcast. We've got so much planned that I quite often don't know when we're recording or who with. So the lads have got to keep us up to speed on that. So keep a look out at Roker Report for all the latest news, and also when the next pod is dropped, which should be very soon. But from us, bye for now.
podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
At Arizona State University, we've made online education better, smarter, and more personalized, so you can go further in your aspiring field.
I decided to pursue medicine once I realized that ASU did have the online program for biological sciences. You're still required to learn the same curriculum. You're still being tested on the same content that anyone would be tested on in person. The comprehensiveness of the program prepared me so well for medical school.
Explore over 350 plus programs at asuonline.asu.edu.